rapidly evolving realm of cybersecurity where new threats emerge with each passing day. Leadership within this sector has never been more critical, and yet it's seldom talked about. And today I'm honoured to host friend of the show, Dr. Chase Cunningham. He's been on 3 times in the last 5 years. It's always a pleasure to get him on. He gets up super early to talk with me. But he's a luminary in the cybersecurity industry. He's affectionately known in professional circles as Dr. Zero Trust. And he's had an illustrious career dedicated to fortifying enterprises against advanced security threats. And he brings a wealth of knowledge and unparalleled expertise to our discussion today. And in the past, our discussions have been largely technical, but beyond his technical acumen, Chase has ventured into the exploration of leadership dynamics within cybersecurity and also aimed to pinpoint some of the pitfalls that often beset organisations. And his new book, which is a cracking read, is called How Not to Lead: Lessons Every Manager Can Learn from Dumpster Chickens and Mushroom Farmers and Other Office Offenders. And let me tell you, in that book, there are a few familiar characters that you've encountered. I know I have. But not only that, there's also a lot of conventional wisdom by laying bare the leadership missteps of what we can all avoid. So Chase is going to come back on here today to not only enlighten, but also to equip current and aspiring leaders with the insights needed to navigate the complex cybersecurity landscape effectively. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way stateside where my good friend Dr. Chase Cunningham is waiting to join me again. So a massive warm welcome back to the show, Chase. For anyone that's missed our previous conversations, and we always have a lot of fun, can you just remind everyone listening with a little about who you are and what you do?
Sure. So I'm currently VP for Security Market Research at G2. I'm a retired U.S. Navy chief, and I worked at the NSA for a number of years, as well as some other government agencies. And in the meantime, I've written a bunch of books.
Said you've released a couple of books. I think you're up to like 8 now. And one of the reasons I wanted to get you back on is your latest book offers a unique perspective by highlighting what not to do in leadership, not just cybersecurity. We're talking leadership here. So can you share the moment or experience that inspired you to take that unconventional approach to discussing leadership? Because I kind of got a feeling there's a story here too, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I definitely wrote it with a little bit of a chip on my shoulder. There's always some catharsis to doing research and publication. But for me, because I consult and I work with so many companies, I've seen so many organizations where the people that are in charge honestly shouldn't be. And I've run into so many times where folks were just almost hell-bent on wrecking the company with their leadership style. I was like, there's got to be a book about, the failure side of this equation. And I read and researched and looked around, and I couldn't really find a lot that were vectored specifically to what you shouldn't do as a leader. And I just kind of took it on myself as well. If somebody's got to be the guy to jump on the sword, it'll be me. And I learned a lot. It is a great project to research and write. But yeah, it was definitely written with a chip on my shoulder. And the folks that are mentioned sort of conversationally in the book, they definitely know who they are, that they should do better.
I love it. And dumpster checking and mushroom farming are vivid metaphors in the book that you used to describe certain leadership failings that you've encountered. So for people listening that have not seen the book, don't know what to expect, can you just explain the significance of those terms and how they encapsulate some of those common leadership pitfalls that will resonate with people listening all around the world?
Sure. And I mean, we've all run into these sort of leadership styles. So dumpster chicken in the Navy, we called seagulls dumpster chickens because that's kind of where they were all at. And if you ran out of food, eventually you might have to eat one. I wouldn't recommend it, but it's possible. And the truth of the matter when you're looking at the leadership style is these are the folks that they kind of fly around squawking about things, and then they'll land and they'll crap all over the problem, and then they fly away. And you're just sitting there going like, how was that helpful? And why didn't you assist me really solving this problem? And that's not something you want. It doesn't help. Some people call it like helicoptering or whatever, but I think the fact that that people do this is still very troubling. And then mushroom farming, we've all been here as well, where you keep your people in the dark and you feed them crap and hope that they figure things out on their own. There's a couple problems with that. One, the mushrooms will actually communicate, and that's where you get these gossip problems. And then two, people start to wonder why you're not telling them the whole story. And the last thing that you want in a leadership position is people guessing what's going on. It's better to keep them informed and educated and be honest with your folks. If you can't trust your workforce to empower them with knowledge, why are they your workforce in the first place?
And I really hope that people can tell just by listening to our conversation today that this isn't just another one of those throwaway business or leadership book. It is very straight talking and a certain amount of humour in there. And you discussed the concept of falling from your ego and hitting your IQ on the way down. So how does that phenomenon manifest among leaders, and why is it crucial for them to recognise and address this? We might be able to speak to some of those leaders directly into their ears right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because in technology, we have this kind of weird phenomenon that you don't see in other organizational structures, where someone can come out of college and they have a good idea and they can write code or something like that. They're very technically adept, and they start building something, and before they know it, they've got VC funding and they're in charge, and they never wanted to be a leader and they never knew how to be a leader, and they're up there because they're super smart. Usually the problem with that is typical type 8 sort of activity. They get pretty high on their own supply, and they're really thinking that they are the best thing since sliced bread. And then they don't understand why everyone is not accepting of the same standard or the same operational need or whatever else that they have. And they need to get knocked off that pedestal. And honestly, it's detrimental to the business and to the employees to deal with those types of people. I think Netflix has a really good book that they had somebody write called the No Asshole Rule, and it's very, very applicable here as well.
The book also mentions 3 non-negotiable currencies that every leader must have. Can you elaborate on these currencies and why missing even just one of them could be detrimental to a leader's effectiveness, not just in tech, but in any business?
Yeah, it's a 3-legged stool. And my research uncovered this, that it's really time, trust, and respect. And what we mean by time is, if you're in charge, you should really think about the currency of time, not just time as a thing, but the currency of it. And everyone here on this planet only has a certain amount of time allotted to them. It's just the reality of where we are. And any time that you as a leader are coming up with things that are taking people's time away, if there's not real value to it, you're literally robbing them of their time on planet Earth where they could do other things. And that filters its way into a lot of organizational structures. You see it where organizations will have, in the military, we used to call it mandatory fun. Nobody wants to be there. It's a waste of time, but people show up because the boss says so. And it eats away at esprit de corps and all those other things. And then that filters into the trust and respect side of, if you're stealing my time, I'm going to lose my trust that you actually care about me as a person. And by that factor, I'm going to stop respecting you. So these things are dependent on one another, and really leadership, in my opinion, should look at these as currencies in the bank. And if you're not investing in those currencies, you're taking away, and sooner or later the bank total comes to zero.
And I think even though there's nearly 5,000 miles difference between us and everybody listening around the world, one thing that we all share in common is we've all had to deal with difficult people. And I think very often there's such a big focus on the next shiny big new technology or shiny big new solution, but we don't focus on the culture and people. And in your book, one of the areas that you deal with as well is dealing with as you term them, brilliant jerks. And it's a challenge that you address. So what strategies do you recommend for managing highly talented but equally occasionally toxic employees without stifling their creativity or harming overall team morale? Because it's quite a balancing act, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I think one thing to really be really careful of is those folks that do display those types of tendencies should be seriously evaluated for leadership roles. A lot of times they kind of wind up in them, and they would tell you that they don't want to be there, but they like the kind of ego bump of being in that spot. It's not that they're actually enjoying it or necessarily that they're good at it. The reality of what you're talking about with a brilliant jerk is they can be very, very valuable. They can do awesome things for the company. They can grow revenue and all those aspects. But many times the business, the people, the culture, the entire organization would be better if you just kind of put them in their own space and let them do their thing, and weren't using them as a go-to-market or somebody that's out there as an evangelist, whatever. Like, that is not their thing. They don't enjoy it. And honestly, they're usually the type of people that don't do well interacting with a lot of folks. So don't make them. It's not going to help anyone.
And your extensive background in cybersecurity and leadership, I think it uniquely positions you to speak about everything we're talking about here, especially around the intersection of technology and leadership. So I've got to ask, how do you see the evolution of leadership in the tech-driven world, especially with the rise of remote work, hybrid working, digital communication tools, everyone going all in and AI and everything? How do you see this space evolving?
I mean, I think really where we're getting to is a space where we should be allowing the organization and the people to kind of grow organically instead of trying to force folks down different roads towards a future that is determined by a spreadsheet or past history. If your people do great working remote, let them work remote. If they do better where they're in an office, then bring them to the office. If they need more time, work with them to get that time and make it available. In today's world, with all the technology that we have and all the capability that every single person has, I don't think that we should be trying to pigeonhole people based on past experience and on kind of the current understanding and thinking of what the market says has to happen. It is detrimental to the overall efficacy of the org. And that's not what you want as a business leader. You want growth. You want happy people. You want operational capability. Doing things the way we did even 5 years ago is not a good way to do things.
And at the start of our conversation today, you were talking about you wrote a book with somewhat of a chip on your shoulder, righting a few wrongs and all the things that you'd seen throughout your career. But the book also does include some real-world case studies of leadership disasters. I don't want to give away too many spoilers here in this podcast for people who are going to check that book out, but can you share maybe an example and the key lesson that it might offer to current and aspiring leaders too?
Yeah, I think one of the ones that stuck out to me, and I had never known this, was everyone looks to Steve Jobs as the guy that kind of reinvented Apple, and he did. But what you probably don't know is that when Steve came back after he was fired by the board, he came back from Next Computers. Part of what he looked at was the P&L of the company and the current structure of the products that they were pushing. And he actually went up and drew a quadrant on a whiteboard and said, here's the 4 things that we're going to do. Any product that we have, and I think at the time Apple Computers had like 37 products. He said anything that doesn't fit in these 4 quadrants is done as of today. And that sounds like a whoa type of moment, but what he really did immediately was move efficacy towards profitability, and it changed Apple Computers. If he hadn't have done that, Apple Computers probably wouldn't exist as it does today.
Wow, incredibly cool. And arguably could fit into the brilliant jerk category as well, right?
Oh, he definitely was a brilliant jerk, yeah.
And finally, for anyone listening looking to reverse negative leadership traits or maybe avoid developing them in the first place, I think self-awareness is such an important trait, but what initial steps or mindset shifts do you think that they should embark on their journey to becoming more effective leaders and not make so many of those mistakes or end up appearing in your book?
Yeah, I mean, I think really there's a chapter I had in there about the types of lenses you should look through. And the biggest one, in my opinion, is the lens, if you will, of the mirror. If you wouldn't work for you, why would somebody else? And if you look at yourself in the mirror and actually go, am I the one who should be running things? Am I doing things for the good of the cause? And is my ego the issue? You should know more about you than you do about everyone else. And that I find that to be difficult for a lot of folks, especially people that are in leadership positions. It's never comfortable to look at yourself in the mirror and go, you know what, I might not be the person that's best for this, but I can make things better by choosing to figure out a different way, even a different person to do this. And me, like I run my own organization. I don't seek leadership roles. It just is, I think there's people that are better suited for it. And that's a key thing that you have to keep in perspective.
Now, before I let you go, I think the pace of technological change at the moment can feel incredibly overwhelming. There's a real pressure on everyone to be in a state of almost constant, continuous learning. So as someone that has got his own company, you've written 8 books, you're always pushing the boundaries of technology and got your eye on the next big thing and future threats, etc. I've got to ask, where or how do you self-educate? Because it's very challenging for a lot of people, but you seem to have mastered this. So any tips or advice you can share on how you keep up to speed with everything?
Well, masters, I'm a long way from mastering, but I definitely, I try and stay engaged. I think, I actually didn't like Audible, but I'm a big fan of Audible now just because I can listen to, the books while I'm, reading or driving or on a plane or those types of things. But I've also found that it's very valuable to set a, kind of a goal for the year of how many books I'm going to read and then, vary what I'm going to read by. I don't stick into the same topic twice. If I read one book about leadership, the next one's about finance. So, a lot of folks would do well to expand your horizons. And the way things are today, it really, there's no excuse not to continually learn. So I would just say, stay engaged and pick your kind of level that you're willing to operate at, and then, do it. It's not that difficult. Just make it happen.
Love that. It's been a huge pleasure as always having you on the podcast. We've talked about everything over the last few years, from cybersecurity to technology to now leadership. Anyone that would like to check out your current book or indeed check out your back catalogue, because you've got another 7 out there as well, what's the best starting point for everything?
Yeah, everything I've got is on Amazon, like everybody else. So I would say check out there. This last book was published by Wiley, Wiley Publications. So if you're looking for that one, it's there. And then we do have an Audible version, and I'm actually working on an Audible version recording with my own voice because it was my book. So I'd love anybody to check the book out, and please provide me any feedback you have.
Oh, I'll be checking that out. I must admit, it makes a huge difference when you listen on Audible, when it is the actual author and not just some actor guy somewhere. It makes such a difference. It feels so much more authentic, doesn't it, when you listen?
Yeah, to me, it's way more engaging.
Well, absolutely love chatting with you. We've covered so much again. Anything else coming out on the horizon? Is there a book number 9, or have you just... You've scratched that itch and you leave it alone and walk away?
I'm taking a little bit of a break from authorship right now, but there's always more in the tank. What it amounts to, I don't know yet, but eventually I'm sure I'll crank out another one.
I'm sure you will, and I'll be waiting to get you back on here to learn more about it. But as always, Chase, thanks for joining me today.
Hey, thank you. Love it.
I think it's clear, isn't it, that the journey to exemplary leadership in the cybersecurity sector, or let's be honest, any field for that matter, is fraught with challenges that demand not only technical prowess, but also profound self-awareness and a dedication to continuous improvement. And I love how Chase brought it to life today with his vivid metaphors and candid exploration of leadership missteps, and ultimately helping provide a compass for anyone navigating the stormy seas of management, and offering actionable strategies that foster an environment of trust, respect, and efficiency. Sounds simple, right? And I think as we close today's episode, we are reminded that the path to leadership is not about failing. It's about learning from it, embodying the key currencies of time, trust, and respect, and most importantly, having the courage to lead differently. But hey, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this one. Have you come across any dumpster chickens and mushroom farmers in your office? Or brilliant jerks? I suspect you have. I'd love to hear your stories. If you don't want to share them with me on the podcast, feel free to slide into my DMs on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. I love a good gossip. You can find me just at Neil C. Hughes, or email me techblogwriter@outlook.com. Because the conversation doesn't stop here. Let me know what steps you would take to transform your leadership approach in the face of evolving threats and opportunities and an increasing pace of technological change. But that's it for today, so I'll be back bright and early tomorrow morning. We've got a completely different topic today. I can't tell you what that is, but if you join me, I'll tell you all about it. So thank you for listening as always, and until next time, don't be a stranger.